morning, everyone, or for many of you, good afternoon. It is Friday, August 21st. My name is Todd Hirsch, and you have joined me live on The Take. This is my weekly LinkedIn Live program where every week we break down the economic, the geopolitical events of the week, and we really put in perspective what this means for you. Now, today, my guest co-host, I'm so excited. Armine Yalnizyan is back joining me. I think she is going to pop up any minute. There she is. Hey, Armine.
Hey, hey.
How are you?
Feeling great. It's the summertime. Love it.
It's the summertime. Now, you're back home in Ottawa today.
Yep.
Right? But you were out here in Calgary this week, so just a quick trip out west. What's the weather like in Ottawa heading into the weekend?
Just absolutely glorious. And when I was in Calgary, it was beautiful too. So a little bit on the hazy side. I don't know if you guys are still getting.
We still have a little bit of smoke for sure.
Yeah. I think that's what it was. Anyway,
yeah,
great weather when I was there.
This week was really a nice. It's the dog days of summer. You know, there's some haze, but not really too much going on. Nice warm weather. But I have to tell you, Armine, I'm especially excited to have you back on because I actually haven't told you this. But you joined me as a guest co-host probably back in May or June. And that episode of The Take is one of the most watched episodes. And it's been shared around. A friend of mine she was at a major conference in Canada for career counseling professionals. This episode that you joined me on The Take, that episode was required reading, or I guess required watching for all the conference attendees in advance of the conference.
That's amazing. Way to go. Yeah. Way to know your audience, to give them what they need.
Well, it was, I guess, a team effort, but it really was, I think, some of the insights that you brought, because you were talking, and I'm sure you still do, about the care economy, healthcare, education, how the future of work is going to really be in that direction, or should be in that direction. So I just wanted to let you know that. So kudos to you for making that episode of The Take one of the most watched ones so far in 2026.
Thank you for letting me know. And that actually raises the bar a little bit for this conversation. Let's see if we can do it again.
I was sort of pumping up the fact that you were going to be returning as a guest co-host today. So I'm assuming that today's numbers or viewership will also be pretty high. Now, there's a couple of topics I want to get into briefly before we get into sort of the big topic that I want to break down with you, and that is that Embark Angus Reid survey that came out this week. But before we get to that, let's talk about a couple of the big issues this week. Of course, I guess we sort of have to begrudgingly talk about tariffs and the trade deal, and there's not really much to talk about. It's still Friday. The extended 3-day deadline, I guess, happens at midnight tonight. We'll see what is going to happen. What are your thoughts? Where is this going? Is this, are we going to get a good deal, or are Canadians going to be cranky?
My thoughts are irrelevant. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Taco Man. Even if we get a deal at midnight tonight, who knows if on Monday he changes his mind.
Yeah.
So there is no, somebody wrote a column, I think it was in the Globe, I think it was actually a reporter, wrote about how there's no way we're going to get a better deal. Our options are bad and badder.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I would agree completely with that. We are in a place where we are not going to win. And the question is only how much are we going to lose?
Right.
And those are significant questions. Those there's nobody out there that would be more adept at handling Trump, I don't think, than our prime minister and that negotiating team. Janice Charette is a force of nature, knows exactly what she's doing. She's a really good negotiator. And Dominique Leblanc, everybody loves him, right? It's hard to pick a fight with them.
So we're in good hands in the negotiations.
I believe so, right? But that doesn't mean anything because they're still calling us nasty. They're still trying to get concessions from us because he's losing everywhere and he needs to show a win.
Yeah.
And to the degree that we are trying to avoid the badder scenario and we just want to go for the bad scenario, we're going to give something up because we know like we're at that pain point with them. I mean, I think we're going to give something up.
The thing that I was writing about this morning on my LinkedIn post was, questioning, is the booze ban really the hill to die on?
Oh, really?
I mean,
yeah.
And my idea is, why don't we let it back on the shelves? But the provincial marketing boards, the liquor boards, they also control labeling and positioning in the stores. So put it at the back of the store. Or my idea was, only kind of tongue in cheek, put a big sticker of Donald Trump's face on every bottle of booze, kind of like what we do with cigarettes, right? As a deterrent. And just as a consumer awareness, like every time you buy this bottle of bourbon or this California wine, it might be delicious, but keep in mind what you are supporting here and make that choice if you want, but you should be aware.
Yeah, my understanding is you can still get Kentucky bourbon in Alberta, and you can still get American wines in Alberta, but that's not
Alberta and Saskatchewan are the only, ones not doing it. And maybe not coincidentally, we were also mostly, unscathed by this, the Section 338 tariffs, this one that was more recent. So obviously this booze ban has gotten under Donald Trump's skin. I say, let's put the booze back on. Let's put his big mug on the face on every bottle. He'll probably love that, for one thing, because he loves himself and he loves his image. And he would see this as, wow, they are really going the extra mile for me. They're putting my face on every bottle of liquor. That's fantastic. Because
I'm not sure your own province would do this, but I think it's a brilliant idea. And I hope somebody from your lips to Premier's ears.
Like BC and Quebec, I think they're the ones most resistant.
Ontario too.
Ontario too.
Captain Canada, who talks the toughest talk. But, I mean, when you think about it, Todd, when they met, when the Prime Minister met with the premiers to update them on the trade talks with the United States, that came out of that meeting talking about fewer interprovincial barriers for booze. These people are booze oriented. It's like, give us something to drink because this is a moment for a drink. I don't know. But I actually think we are in a very difficult moment for not losing things. I mean, I think you're not the only one that has asked me offline if supply management might be.
Yeah.
If it's not booze that we're going to die on, might we sacrifice supply management? My answer to which is October 5th, 2026 is the Quebec provincial election. And there's no way they're giving that up before October the 5th. And 6 weeks in Trump time is an eternity. You just don't know what'll happen in 6 weeks. So I wouldn't say that I would hope we're not on the precipice of getting something like that away. But, those are the three things that Trump keeps talking about: booze, auto, and dairy. So we'll see what it is that he wants. We've already done, as you know, unilateral concessions on digital sales tax and other things. And there are things that we could be doing to protect ourselves against foreign and basically an investment invasion that's coming. I hope we can talk about this sometime in the future, Todd, around the time of the investment summit, the first ever investment summit in Canada that the Prime Minister is convening, because, historically for millennia, jurisdictions have put rules in place to prevent capital outflows. So capital can't just leave your jurisdiction. This is a moment for actually preventing money from coming in, like we did during the foreign buyer ban on semi-detached and detached homes. We're trying to prevent capital from coming in and flooding a market and basically financializing an essential good. And that might happen again.
We will definitely revisit that topic when it is kind of in the news a bit more.
Yes.
What is the date of that investment summit the Prime Minister is holding?
14th and 15th of September.
Okay, so a little bit less than a month from now. So we'll definitely flag that as a topic, and hopefully I can have you back as a guest on that one.
Well, if you don't have me, you should have somebody, because it's just actually quite momentous what is about to happen on the investment scene in Canada. And of course, this Prime Minister and his team is all about investment, which is completely reasonable because the option is disinvestment.
Yeah.
That's what we're facing right now.
Okay, let's get to topic number 2, which I'm just going to touch on briefly because, again, I want to save most of the time for the future of work. But this idea that I've been grappling with this summer, I'm a bit curious as to the gap I see between business sentiment and consumer sentiment and what is actually happening in the economy, at least as insofar as, Stats Canada measures GDP. And we understand GDP is by far an imperfect measure, but it does sort of tally up how much stuff are we producing. Now that is quarterly, quarter over quarter GDP in Canada. You see there was one negative quarter in 2025. A different way you can calculate it looking at annualized, there is 2 quarters that are negative. That was, are we in a recession? But generally speaking, you look at this graph and you say, well, things are okay. Maybe not gangbusters, but I don't know. To me, this data does not describe an economy in chaos or crisis. Now, Peter, bring up the next graph. That is business sentiment in Canada. This is the Bank of Canada's quarterly survey showing that, things are actually pretty glum. And these quarters actually align to the quarters in the previous graph. What is your take on this? Why are businesses and consumers maybe a little more dismal than, in fact, what the economy suggests?
Canada is an extraordinarily export-driven country. And while we did not lose great value in exports overall, we did lose a lot of money in what we sent to the United States. What happened, though, is what Mr. Trump is doing is creating so much global uncertainty. We made up for all of our losses by shipping more gold. So we shipped more gold to central banks. We shipped more gold to various investors that really want the equivalent in a period of uncertainty of hiding money under your mattress, hiding value under your mattress, value that won't disappear overnight. And because so many people and institutions were doing that, the price of gold went through the roof. So while we did ship a little bit more gold in terms of volume, we didn't produce more gold. Our rates of gold production did not go up tremendously, but the value of what we produced and what we shipped doubled over the course of 2025. And that's really the big difference for not sliding into recession. So you wanted to say something, and let me just tell you why that doesn't.
Yeah. So those GDP numbers are somewhat then inflated by the fact that we're exporting gold at a higher value. We're not, if you strip that out, maybe the GDP picture is not quite as stable or not quite as rosy.
Yeah, and same with oil and gas. Like we are actually, or something like a trade affected sector like aluminum. So aluminum is fascinating because we're actually sending quite a bit less aluminum in its manufactured state, but not processed state we're sending less to the United States, but we're sending way more to other parts of the country. Where we're losing ground is in the extrusion process, where you take that raw material and you turn it into, the stuff we use in building houses or building planes or whatever.
Yeah. But I don't have a graph on this one, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but, even this morning, Stats Canada's retail sales actually pretty good.
Yeah.
For the month of June. Now, I couldn't help but think, was that lifted a bit by FIFA excitement and people buying soccer shirts and football paraphernalia in Toronto and Vancouver? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, there was a big sort of boost in enthusiasm. That might have been enough to move retail sales. But again, even adjusting for inflation, consumers are still out there spending. So they might tell somebody in a survey, oh, no, things are really bad. Or a business might say, yeah, business conditions are just awful. But they're still out there spending money, and not just on non-discretionary things like food and gasoline. They're out there spending on, apparel. They're spending on jewelry. They're spending on, electronics, kind of across the board.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Sometimes I think we live in I was writing this week about economic hallucinations, how sometimes we can fall, I guess we become susceptible to internalizing all of this negative news around us, where it might not actually impact our business or our personal financial situation. It might, or it might impact, if you're a business, it might impact your customers, but it actually might not. But are we internalizing? We are just ruthlessly bombarded by 24/7 news cycle, and it's all negative right now. And it all feels chaotic. Everything from the tariffs to these tragic wars, to the fires that are burning, to AI, panic, and everything's negative. Is there a risk that sometimes we internalize that negativity, think things are actually worse than they are, but actually business conditions and consumer spending, it actually holds up?
I've been wrong before, but I would say that business sentiment being down lately makes perfect sense to me. The uncertainty, the longer it drags on, more businesses are going to feel like, okay, I went through COVID. I went through the hike in interest rates. I went through the inflation spike in all my inputs. I've gone through all of these things. I couldn't find enough workers, right? I've been through all of these things, and then now a trade war. So whereas the big companies may not be feeling terrible, there's an awful lot of smaller companies, especially in places like Alberta, that are just not going to make it through an indefinite period of uncertainty. And that is going to change the ecosystem of the business landscape, where you've got bigger players and fewer small players, a small number of big players and fewer smaller players. So, which is never good for competition. It's never good for business. Business doesn't like competition, but we as an economy want more competition, not only for better pricing, but also for more innovation. And that's what I think is at risk. And when it comes to consumers, when you've got this degree of uncertainty, and you know that we are in this prolonged period of no hire, low fire, the firing is about to begin. And it will continue until morale is improved.
Well, I never bet against you, Armine. I hope you're wrong on that one, but I have a high degree of confidence that you, in fact, could be right. I think a lot will hinge on what happens after this trade deal wraps up. Also after October 19, which is a big referendum date here in Alberta, and actually after the Quebec election as well. So we got a lot of events coming up this fall that I think will either make or break business sentiment and going into 2027.
Well, just to underscore, why does business sentiment and consumer sentiment deviate? And why does those two things deviate from GDP numbers? And the secret sauce, I think, is workers. And the flip side of workers is who's spending. So it's great that we're still spending now, but don't forget the famous K-shaped recovery, right? There are some people that are unaffected by
that is true.
And some people that are very affected, not just by the trade wars, but by the fact that they can't get enough hours.
Right.
So you've got more than one thing going on in the consumer market, more than one thing going on in the business market, and all of it is driven by uncertainty. Well,
and looking just at retail numbers, it reminds me of a caution I always give to economists and to audiences. The idea of looking at just the average and making too many assumptions. The economist who comes across a guy whose head is in a furnace and feet are in blocks of ice, and he says, well, on average, you're comfortable.
Yes.
Where the guy's not in good shape at all. So it is a good caution that we can't read too much into one number like retail sales. But I want to use your comment about workers to segue into our last topic. And that is this survey that came out from Embark. Do you know Embark as a group?
I don't, but you've introduced me to them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just heard a news story earlier this week on the radio about this group Embark, and they did a survey with Angus Reid, and it was basically trying to get a feel for how Canadians view the education system. And apparently only 20% of Canadians, 1 in 5, feel that children in school today are being well prepared for the workforce of 2050. Armine, what's your take? You're going to say they're not prepared for the workforce of 2030, which is probably very true. But what do you think? Should we be worried about this?
100% we should be worried about
This is
it.
one more thing like ticks and microplastics and everything that we have to worry about. But
Seriously, I wouldn't say it's something we have to worry about like ticks or E. coli or explosive diarrhea or, frozen blueberries that could kill you. I mean, it's not of that ilk. It is a slow burn. And it is one of these things that anybody in previous generations could have told you is a very bad path that we're on. So when we were first talking about this story and I looked at the headline about not prepared for the labor market of 2050, and it was crazy to me to see this as a labor economist, as any kind of an economist, forecasting to 2050 at this moment seems insane. And then I rolled back the tape and I thought, okay, if you were born this year, you'd be 24 years old in 2050. And I'm thinking about how little we are investing in this cohort of children that are preschoolers right now. Like we are acting like they are as dispensable as my age group, the boomers, as we moved through the labor market in the 80s and 90s. That is just not the case. Already at this moment, we have the smallest working age cohort we have seen in 50 years. We are basically spending a pile of money on both ends of the labor market, both ends of the demographic scale. And so we don't have enough babies. We've got a lot of boomers and we don't like immigrants. How's that working for you? Right? So if you also discount the small number of people that are choosing to have, if you discount the material conditions of the families that are trying to raise children and are having children, you're going to have an even worse dynamic going into this. We know from about 35 years of research that Head Start, which was an early learning program in the United States, delivered the goods, man. We keep talking about cheap childcare as an affordability thing that helps mom get back to work. Where you really need to invest is in the capacity of very young kids to be the best they can be. Because the first 5 years of life, people are sponges. You and I, we were picking up stuff we didn't even know we were picking up.
Yeah.
And so you want the things that you are picking up to develop your skills, to develop your ability to deal with others, to be peaceful, to know how to get along, and to have fun.
Yeah.
You need to have resilience.
Well, and that reminds me of a comment that I got because I posted this on LinkedIn, this Embark survey, and this topic we're on about 20% of Canadians don't think kids are getting in school what they need. A really great comment, actually, by my friend Jennifer Garrison, who's a very thoughtful, intelligent person. And she said, well, hold on. She goes, education is more than just training workers. This is about citizenship. Yeah. This is about equipping people to get along with each other, to be good citizens, to support democracy, to do all these things. And I thought it was a nice little reminder that, skills are important, but education, especially public education, is more than just pounding skills into children's heads. It's about something bigger.
It's definitely not just about being learning ready, but it is also about.
It is also, yeah.
Ready. I think people look at who it is that's benefiting from the $10 a day, if we actually manage to commit ourselves to $10 a day, that goal, it's people that already had access to care. We have not expanded the system enough to get it to the people who could most benefit from having high quality childcare, high quality, consistent childcare, because it is about caring.
Right.
It isn't just about learning, though it is about learning. And I guess a huge part of this, again, if you think about what we know in terms of neuroscience and how quickly the brain learns how to be a human being, so much of this mental health issues that we are talking about, resilience, depends on finding joy and awe in the things that are around you. If you've had a child in your life, as they move from being a plasma blob to being able to talk a bit, to being able to discover, you go on that journey with them And then you remember things that you forgot that you found so awe-inspiring. It's just great for everybody. And it is like the antidote to the negative Nancy stuff that is like, that's the sea we're swimming in. So it's a little bit of joy for everybody, but it pays off so in such big terms. I'm just going to trot out some numbers. From the Head Start program, for every dollar invested in low income, in high quality, consistent childcare and early learning in low income neighborhoods, for every dollar that was expended, they got $14 back.
Wow.
In the course of the lifetime, because people used public services like healthcare less, they used unemployment insurance less, they were employed for longer, they didn't have as many altercations with the law. So all these forms of public savings, plus the people that had been invested in, got jobs earlier, had better labor force participation, and saw more earnings growth over the course of of their lives. Now, we don't have that kind of longitudinal data anymore in Canada, but the United States still does collect these data where they're following these people over the course of their lives. And it's like, the evidence is in, man. This is like, this literally pays for itself. And it isn't just because mom goes to work. It's because we are investing. You know, what I used to say about this is invest early, invest often in your kids, in not just your kids, in our kids. And this is especially true at a time when the smallest labor force cohort in history is in our midst.
Yeah. Well, Armine, we're going to have to leave it there. I mean, you and I could talk on for at least another half an hour about that and all other topics, interesting and relevant, but we are at the bottom of the hour. Very quickly before we bid you adieu, what's your weekend looking like?
Oh, I'm going to garden.
Garden.
I love gardening.
Well, you still have several more weeks of nice, warm gardening weather in Ontario. Alberta, we're probably heading for frost in the next couple of weeks.
What?
Well, I mean, especially Calgary, we're high up. I was just talking to someone this week. They're halfway through harvest already.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, early September is not unusual for frost to hit, especially Calgary. Edmonton gets a little bit longer, but Southern Ontario, you guys are growing flowers well into October.
Yeah, tropical flowers. That's what
tropical flowers. More and more tropical as the climate heats up. Yeah. But with that, I will let you go. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Peter Clark in the background who keeps everything running and keeps us looking great. With that, everyone, have a wonderful weekend. Be kind to each other and join us next Friday on The Take. Bye-bye for now.